Today we're diving into something pretty wild. We're looking at an author's take on two events that seem to, they seem to break the laws of nature. They really challenge you to see the world in a whole new light.
So get this. Can a mudslide just stop in its tracks? Or what about a wildfire that burns down an entire neighborhood but decides to skip one single house? Now, these aren't just philosophical questions or scenes from a movie. According to the author we're looking at, these things actually happened, and they might just change how you think the universe really works. Okay, so what are we actually talking about here? Let's get right into the two specific, really strange incidents that this whole argument is built on. So you've got these two immense forces of nature, and they're both acting in ways that just don't make sense. A mudslide supposedly just freezes for a moment, letting a van get by. At the same time, you have a raging wildfire that almost surgically avoids one house while destroying everything around it. I mean, the contrast is just staggering. And look, the author grounds these stories with specific details. We're talking about a mudslide in Atami, Japan, where this van gets spared, and a wildfire in Malibu, where one home is left standing perfectly fine among all this rubble. So these aren't being presented as some vague ancient legends. They're framed as real modern-day events.
All right, so if we just accept for a minute that these events happen the way they're described, the very next question has to be, how? And that question throws us right up against what we know about the laws of physics.
And yeah, this is really the heart of the problem, isn't it? A mudslide, it's all about gravity, momentum. It doesn't have a pause button. A wildfire is driven by fuel and wind and heat. It doesn't just politely go around a house that's right in its path. So the author's point is that from a purely scientific, material point of view, these events are basically impossible. So this is the big turning point in the argument. If our scientific models can't explain it, then we have to start looking for another explanation, right? And the one that's proposed here is, it's a huge step away from what we normally think.
The author's answer isn't something you'd find in a science journal. It's found in spirituality. The explanation they put forward is this idea called heaven's protection.
Now, according to the author, this kind of protection isn't just random luck. It's something that's earned based on a person's virtue. Their good thoughts, their good words, their good actions. It comes from having a deep respect for life, for nature. So in this view, who you are on the inside can have a direct, physical impact on the world around you. And here's the main idea, straight from the author. It's a pretty straightforward cause and effect. Goodness leads to safety. The implication, then, is that the people in that van and the people in that untouched house, they must have been virtuous enough to earn this kind of incredible intervention. This whole idea of virtue bringing you divine protection, it leads to an even bigger philosophical question about what we should be focused on in life. I mean, if that's what keeps you safe, then what should we really be chasing? And this sets up a huge conflict, really. Most of society tells us, go get the money, the power, the fame. But the author is making the case for one single, much bigger priority, developing a perfect soul.
The author is super explicit about this. In this way of looking at the world, spiritual purity isn't just one value among many others. It's the supreme value. It's more important than all the worldly things we're taught to achieve. Everything else is just secondary.
Okay, so if nurturing your soul is the most important thing you can do, what does that actually mean for how we live day to day? This last section really ties it all together, defining what life's ultimate purpose is from this perspective.
The author basically lays out two different ways to live. You have the awakened person, who sees life as this journey to be experienced, to be appreciated. And then you have the fool, who spends that same journey just chasing after money and status. It's really a choice between being present in the moment and being distracted by the prize.
And this brings us right back to where we started, with those mysterious events. The awakened one, by focusing on the journey itself, is the one who's considered virtuous. And because of that, they're the one who gets heaven's protection. The fool, who's all caught up in worldly things, is basically left to face the chaos of the world on their own. So the author's whole argument leads to this final, really powerful conclusion. If you strip everything else away, the one thing that really truly matters, the greatest of all things, is purifying your own soul. In this worldview, that's the beginning, middle, and end of a meaningful life. So we started with a mudslide that paused and a fire that spared a house. And from those two seemingly impossible events, the author builds this whole philosophy for a life based on inner virtue instead of outer success. And it leaves us with a really compelling question, doesn't it? For our own lives, in a world that is constantly pushing us to achieve material goals, what would it actually look like to make purifying the soul our #1 priority?